Just before I could scream out, "Deer in the road," the creature began to walk very quickly. And at that moment I realized it had 2 legs, not 4. Those who have seen a Sasquatch, what is your story? Okay, going out on a limb here and sharing my story. I'm a Silicon Valley, San Jose native and have frequented the adjacent Santa Cruz Mountains all my life. This incident happened on the Loma Prieta Grade Trail in the forest of Nizhny Marks SP in the late summer of 2019. Basically, my girlfriend at the time and I were hiking on a Wednesday morning. There were definitely already people around. This is a popular trail as it's a really beautiful locale. That said, there were also stretches when it was just the 2 of us. I think it's a 5-mile-ish hike total, and we were about an hour in when my girlfriend had to pee. There were thick trees on both sides, so we looked for a clearing on our right side. We saw not really a path, but an opening, and walked past the tree line, maybe 20 to 30 feet in. She wanted to be out of sight of anyone who passed by. I tossed her my backpack which had toilet paper, and she ducked behind a tree. I walked back down the clearing about halfway, but I could still see her. She's squatting and peeing, and I'm just waiting. Like I said, I could see her the whole time. It was darker inside the trees obviously, but I could still see just fine. So I'm standing there with nothing to do but look around me. That's when I caught the movement of something on my left. There was a medium-sized tree with a very distinct, very dark hand on it. It was about 10 or so feet away. At first I thought it was someone wearing black gloves. I don't know why, but I immediately thought it was some biker perv looking in on my girlfriend peeing. That's when I saw the face peek out and everything turned upside down. I can't say with full certainty, but I'd say it was 7 to 8 feet tall, easy. I'm 6 feet 2. I only saw half of it, but it was everything you would expect from a classic description of Bigfoot. Big black eyes, large flat nose, dark skin with blackish grayish hair. I could see only a hint of a conical skull. Really based on nothing in particular, I feel like I saw a female. Not sure why, I just do. Anyway, it peeked back and forth twice. The eyes were mesmerizing. That's the best way to describe it. They felt like they were looking right through my soul. I wasn't scared really, but I was definitely in shock, like the way seeing a car accident feels like everything is in slow motion. The second time it peeked out, it looked at me for a few seconds then ducked back behind the tree, but also sank like it was going onto the ground. That was the last I saw of it. My girlfriend finally finished, and when she came back toward me, that was when the fear hit me. Not like I was in danger right at that moment, but more like the reality of what I saw finally hit me. Quickly took her hand and pulled her back onto the trail. I didn't say what I saw, but I said we had to go back as soon as possible. She was confused, but I explained to her what I saw as we walked back at a much brisker pace than when we came up. Okay, so I have a story that happened to me and my friends. To set the scene, we were on a Boy Scout camping / shooting trip. There were 20 to 30 of us. We were in a little cabin thing with windows on the front and back, and a front and back door. There were wooden tables all around the area. The adult cabin, with the bathroom, was about 1/8 of a mile down a gravel road in the dark. There was obviously a buddy system, because it's Boy Scouts. So it's around midnight, and everyone had been telling scary stories, like normal camping trips. Well, I had to go to the bathroom, and ask my friend to come along. He said sure, and he got our knives. We knew that there were bears in the woods, and it made us feel safer. Well, we went to the bathroom, and began our walk back. This is where it got scary. I felt an instinctual fear. I looked to my friend, and he had the same look as me. We begin to walk a little faster and unfold our pocket knives. I then turn around and see it. It looked similar to a cat, but it was 6 feet tall and was on its hind legs, kinda hunched over. I freaked the heck out and started running. My friend sees it too, and we sprint back to the cabin. It began making a moaning / howling noise. It was somewhere between the two and followed us slowly. We pound on the door, and the guys let us in. We tell them what we saw, and they actually believed us. So we locked the front door, and look at the back door. It had no lock. We pushed a table up against it, and had a kid there with his knife. For safety, we draw the blinds on all the windows that had them. One of them didn't, and we sat there, with all the lights on. Then we see the eyes outside of the windows without blinds. We all are terrified, and the thing slowly walked to the back door. We heard it bumping up against it, maybe trying to open it, we think. It then left, but we still thought we were going to die. No one slept. When the adults came to wake us up, we told them, and they laughed, and said we were making it up. We know it happened, even if they don't believe us. I live in Onalaska, Wisconsin. There is a swatch of wooded county land behind my house with a large stream running through it. My dog and I found a trail at the edge of the neighborhood park on November 5th, 2018. We followed the trail as it meandered parallel to the stream. The trees and undergrowth had lost their leaves. The little valley began to narrow. It was quiet. No squirrels bounding. No birds singing. On my right, roughly 15 yards away, I heard a deep-toned growl on a long exhaled breath. I first thought it reminded me of my dad's male German Shepherd dog. This voice sounded like it came from a larger pair of lungs than King's. My dog sniffed the air, straining forward to follow a scent. The back of my neck went all prickly, and my heart was pounding. I retreated quickly, looking back often, frightened that I would see evidence that we were being chased. All around us were silent trees. No wind, no bird or squirrel sounds. And airy vacuum with only the muffled, occasional rush of the stream over a fallen tree. I went back today, but didn't have the courage to go past the first open glade. My yard touches the edge of this county land. I have often looked to the woods, and had the feeling I was being watched. I never allow myself to be alone in the backyard after dark. Perhaps the most well-known of Bigfoot abductions is the 1924 Albert Ostman story. Ostman, a Canadian prospector, claimed that he was carried off into the night by a Sasquatch while still nestled inside his sleeping bag. The creature carried him for miles and miles across the countryside. Hours passed before the abductor placed him on the ground. When Ostman crawled from the bag, he discovered 3 more of these beings, a young boy and girl, and an old female. The abductor was like an old man. The family stood over Ostman, chattering away in their own language. Ostman noted the geography of their dwelling. I could see, now that I was in a small valley or basin about 8 or 10 acres, surrounded by high mountains. On the southeast side there was a V-shaped opening about 8 feet wide at the bottom, and about 20 feet high at the highest point. That must be the way I came in. But how will I get out? The old man was now sitting near this opening. Ostman lived with the creatures for 6 days. Though he had a weapon, he did not want to shoot the family, since they brought him no harm. As the days passed, Ostman studied their interpersonal dynamics, and what perhaps brought them to this spot. I don't think this valley was their permanent home. I think they moved from place to place, as food is available in different localities. They might eat meat, but I never saw them eat meat, or do any cooking. He added, I think this was probably a stopover place, and the plants with sweet roots on the mountainside might have been in season this time of the year. They seem to be most interested in them. The roots have a very sweet and satisfying taste. They always seem to do everything for a reason, wasted no time on anything they did not need. Ostman eventually escaped by offering the old man a box of snuff. The creature curiously ingested the tobacco, became sick, and did not pursue Ostman as he ran away. I wasn't going to share this until I saw a similar experience in the same area of the Awari forest. I was at the trailhead of Dutchman's Creek at 9 in the morning during a weekday about 2 weeks ago. Mine was the only car at the trailhead until after 10:30, with only logging trucks passing through every 30 to 45 minutes. I was walking down Dutchman's Creek, enjoying the solitude and quiet of the forest, when I turned a bend and heard a loud knock at my 2 o'clock, and was answered by another at my 10 o'clock within 1 second of the first. It threw me off. because it sounded like an answering reply. I walked back up the trail and hung out for about 30 minutes just listening, relaxing, before I choose to head back down the trail. As I approached the same bend in the trail, I again heard a wood knock at my 10 o'clock and then a second at my 5 o'clock. Extremely weird, I thought, and again within 1 second of each other. I decided to walk back up the trail towards the second knock. There's an ATV trail near the trailhead. I walked up until I heard another wood knock around the same area. I would have estimated the second at my 5 o'clock would have been. I waited for about 15 minutes without hearing or seeing anything else. I decided to walk back to the base of the trailhead, and within 20 footsteps back down the trail I heard something huff at me from over my left shoulder. It came from inside a deep ditch, but I didn't see anything there. I've had deer huff at me before when I've gotten close and they spotted me. I'm sure bear huff as well to threaten / challenge something, but what got me was that I heard and saw no movement at all throughout this entire time. I walked back to the trailhead, waited 15 to 20 minutes, and then snuck back towards the same spot. I was completely quiet, no rustling from my clothes, boots didn't rustle plants, and no crunch from dried leaves or twigs. As I approached, I heard what sounded like a guttural baby moan or call. This occurred in high brush on the other side of the ditch to my right. The sound occurred every handful of minutes, and I would creep closer to see if I could spot it. Though the sound would change the direction it was facing, there was never any movement in the brush, and though I always carry when I'm in the woods, I dared not enter into the thick brush, especially since I couldn't identify the animal that had huffed at me nor what type of animal was making the cries from in the brush. I didn't feel spooked until after the event, when I thought over what had happened. I enjoy the woods, tracking and following game trails, and though most of my experiences in Florida swamps with hogs or deer, I couldn't identify the guttural moaning or see the thing that huffed at me. My husband and I are visiting family in Sandy Hook. On the evening of the 18th, at about 7:30, we got in the car to make a quick run to Sandy Hook. It was very cold, it was already dark as well, so he started up the car to let it warm before we took off. As we were waiting, he called his grandmother because of the call time on his phone. We know what time this all occurred. While he was talking to her, his low fuel light came on, and they wrapped up the call at 7:45. We pulled out of the driveway and headed down the road. He was going a little faster than normal because we were a little nervous we'd run out of gas if we dilly-dallied too much. As we got into the curve about a quarter of a mile from my mom's house, I spotted something in the hollow ahead of us. It was almost out of the range of his headlights, and by my calculations, about 75 to 100 feet away from us. Now this all happened very quickly, but because I'm observant, especially when it comes to spotting deer crossing the road, I was able to make this observation within a couple of seconds. What I saw first was presumably an animal standing on the edge of the opposite lane. I leaned forward and scrutinized closer. Just before I could scream out, "Deer in the road," the creature began to walk very quickly, and at that moment I realized it had 2 legs, not 4. At some point I started screaming, "Turn on your brights. There's something in the road." All the while, I'm looking at this thing, which is very big in stature, thick legs, thick abdomen, and, again by my calculations, at least 7 foot tall. It was the color of a tree, specifically the trees in that area, so like a grayish brown, very earthy tone. The area where I assume a face would be was lighter in color, but I couldn't tell what color. I know this because it turned its head and looked straight at our car. My husband saw movement and he saw what he described as a strange shadow, but he did not see the creature. Only I saw the creature, and in fairly good detail. Again, it happened so quickly though, I didn't get to see feet, hands or facial details like eyes and mouth. That night, the neighborhood dogs were acting very strange. Our dog was growling and nervous, and took off after something unseen. All of the neighborhood dogs continued to howl and bark throughout the night. We now have a Patreon account. Please consider supporting us so that we can keep bringing you this awesome content. Make sure you subscribe and watch our other videos too. Don't forget to turn on notifications to catch our latest videos.